Welcome back to Spot of Red. After week 10, we have a few changes. I'm actually going to change my format up a little bit. Nobody searches for a top 12. I'm still going to do a top 12 emphasis, but I am going to go ahead and fill out the top 25, and I will go over that before the top 12 bracket. Go ahead and get started on the top 12. So I have a little bit of a surprise. Starting at number 12, I have the Louisville Cardinals. I believe when you're doing a ranking that if you're a Power 5 team with only one loss, no matter how good other teams might possibly be, like your LSUs and your Notre Dames, I believe that they should still be ranked because they have less losses. They're only a one-loss team. So that's why I have the Cardinals coming in at number 12. Hey, this team, they rely on their running game a good bit. They run the ball a lot more than they pass. They play really good defense. And I actually think that they're a tough matchup for Florida State. If Louisville can continue to take care of business and make it to that ACC championship, they could be a tough matchup for Florida State. We'll have to see. I'll talk about Florida State's pass defense later on, but I think Louisville could give them a pretty good game because it's looking like right now that they would be the best team to play Florida State, and Florida State really needs that game too to happen because if Louisville wins out, they would probably still be like a top 15 team, and that would look better on Florida State's resume if Florida State gets the win to get into the college football playoff. For Louisville, actually, since their running game is so big, the guy I have to watch for them, I think it's Jawhar Jordan. It's their main running back. Watch out for him if you're watching a Louisville game. To number 11, that would be Penn State. They move up one. They let Indiana hang around for pretty much the whole game. They got that long touchdown pass towards the end of the game and a safety right after that kind of saved them. Going back to that offense, man, they're not going to go anywhere until they find a way to move the ball. I don't know if they need more talent around Allard or something, but that defense is world class. It's all they need is a little better of an offense. I mean, even a little bit, if they're just above average, I still don't think they're going to beat Michigan. They'll probably just be in a decent bowl game against who knows, but I just have no faith in Penn State. I just don't think they have the offense to do anything. Plus, the guy I'm telling you to watch for most TD receptions is their tight end, Tyler Warren, number 44. So take a look out for them. That shows you that maybe they need to go out and get some wide receiver talent or something. They've got two good running backs. Or maybe it's the OC, or, change their scheme. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. I don't think they're going to beat Michigan either. We'll go next to Ole Miss at number 10. They handled their business against Vandy. Vandy only had 60 yards of passing offense in the 33-7 route. Ole Miss, hey, they got Georgia next week. Hey, they still got Texas A&M this week. Texas A&M is not someone you can just overlook by any means. So we'll see. Hopefully they're not looking towards Georgia next week and they forget about Texas A&M this week. I think Lane Kiffin is a better coach than that. I'm really curious on how well they play this week against Texas A&M. It could, if they play really well, it could be a lot of momentum going into that Georgia game next week. So let's see how they play. The guy I have to look for them is one of their wide receivers, Trey Harris. He wears number 9. He has 6 TDs and 536 receiving yards. So at number 9, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. They had a bye week this week. That's why I kind of bumped them down. Plus, there were some other teams that had some big wins, and that's why I wanted to move them up. They have the big game against LSU this week. College Game Day, it's their featured game. Alabama's going to be able to win out, go to the SEC championship. They have Kentucky next week. Actually, watch out for the upset. I actually think LSU is going to beat Alabama this week. LSU has the number one offense in the nation. Their quarterback's playing so well. I know Alabama has a top 20 defense. They're ranked 16 in overall yards allowed on their defense, so their defense is good. If LSU can put some pressure on Milroe, I think they got a really good shot. I bet Alabama is really, really wishing that they had Arch Manning right now because they could really use him. Even though I think Milroe has really grown a lot. I mean, he got benched after the loss against Texas. They had like a cupcake game, if you want to call it, and they tried out a few quarterbacks. It didn't work out. Saban said, okay, look, we got to go back to Milroe. He has been growing some. We'll see how they do this week. I'm looking for LSU to upset them. The guy I have to look out for Alabama is actually a Georgia Bulldog transfer, Jermaine Burton. He's a wide receiver. He's number 3. I believe he's leading the team in receptions. Look out for Jermaine Burton. At number 8, I have the Texas Longhorns. They had a big win this week. We all know Ewers is out a few weeks with that shoulder injury. I think it's week to week. I think it first came out it was going to be 2 to 4. Now they're saying it's week to week. And here's the thing. I think Longhorn fans, they were waiting for that bloodline, that Manning era to begin. Nope, they put in Malik Murphy. I mean, this kid, I didn't know much about him until this week or last week before I watched a little bit of the game. God, he's a big kid. He's 6'5", 235. He's got a big arm. He's got a cannon. So he came in, led Texas to a win. They look like they were still rolling as normal. So even without Ewers, they still have this Murphy kid. And then they have Arch on the bench. If they want to let him play against Kansas State this week, they have Kansas State this week. I'm wondering if they're just going to let Arch sit, but it looks like he has some competition with Murphy. And this is my featured guy for them, Jonathan Brooks. They're running back number 24. He's 5th in the nation in rushing. They can rely on that running game to allow these younger kids to develop a little bit while they're waiting Ewers to get healthy. I believe, though, they have to have Ewers to get into that college football playoff because I know Oklahoma lost. Texas still has some games they got to get through, and then if they do have to play Oklahoma again, I think they're going to need Ewers to win that ball game and to get in the college football playoff to have a chance at a national title. At number 7, I have the Oklahoma Sooners. They had a big upset to Kansas, but I fully believe if you only have one loss, you should be ahead of the team that you beat. They beat Texas head to head. You should be ahead of them in the rankings. Even though the upset is the upset, both of you have one loss. The other loss came to the head-to-head person. So that's why I put Oklahoma above Texas. And what's bad, I was talking about how good Dylan Gabriel was looking, but man, he kind of struggled in the passing game. Maybe it was to the weather. They had the weather delay, and maybe that was bothering him. I mean, he had 3 rushing TDs, so he showed his legs. And, man, I talked about how good their defense was. And then towards the end, when they had the lead, they went into a prevent defense, especially on that long 4th down that Kansas, they were able to succeed on that 4th down. They were playing that prevent. To me, prevent defense is preventing a win. To me, it's not helping you sometimes, but they went into that prevent defense. I was kind of disappointed in Venables. I thought he'd be a little more aggressive. Kansas played a good game, and they upset who I had at number 2, Oklahoma. The featured player for Oklahoma I have this week is Danny Stutzman. He's their linebacker number 2. God, he's all over the field. He has 73 tackles, 2 sacks, and 1 interception. So look out for number 2, the linebacker. Number 6, I have the Oregon Ducks. They had a statement win in Utah. If you watch Pat McAfee's show, he was there Friday and then going into game day on Saturday. On Friday, they talked so much about how Utah doesn't lose at home. They had Cam Rising there. The coach rode up in a Harley. It was a fun episode that they had on Friday. And they were just talking about how Utah doesn't lose at home. And then Oregon came in there and just whooped that butt. I mean, it was a dominating win for Oregon. Bo Nix continues to look good. They have USC next week. USC has a big game this week. I think Oregon is a very good football team, and they have a very good shot of making the college football playoff. Their featured player this week is, and I love cornerbacks that just want to get into the fray. So this is Evan Williams. He's a defensive back. He's number 33. He has 45 tackles and 3.5 sacks for a defensive back. That's pretty impressive. I love when safeties, DBs come in there and get into the fray. So I always like to give them props. So look out for number 33. So at number 5, I have the Michigan Wolverines. They had a bye week. Man, that sign stealing is just hanging over their heads, and it will for the rest of the season. And I feel, if you watch College Game Day, I agree with a lot of what they said. This is such a good football team, and it's about the kids and how well they're playing. It sucks that they're going to have this hang over their head. No matter how well they do this year, this is going to be what everybody talks about. It's not going to be talking about how good their defense is playing, how well their offense is finding ways to put up a lot of points. It sucks that stuff like this and the media pays so much attention to it that you're taking away the kids that work hard every day, are playing really hard to go and win a national championship. But Harbaugh promised that there wouldn't be any more, and they keep finding ways to have distraction. I'm not sure Harbaugh is going to stay there much longer. They came out with some news yesterday that Michigan rescinded a contract extension, which found out to be false. Who knows what's going on? It's just taken away from the kids, and that's what I don't like. Let's just play football. And I know this is a big deal. If they were doing that, they really shouldn't. You know, if you break the rules, you break the rules, and you should pay the consequences. I really hate to see that for this Michigan football team because they are so good. Their featured player is Jalen Harrell. He's the defensive end, number 32. He has 2 forced fumbles and 3.5 sacks for the Wolverines. So let's get in our top 4. At number 4, I have the Georgia Bulldogs. They had a much-needed win over Florida. All the weak schedule naysayers keep talking about how weak Georgia's schedule is. Their schedule was weak last year. We went on to win a national championship and dominated in the national championship game. We have a big game against Missouri this week, which I actually have Missouri as number 13, right outside my 12. They got Ole Miss, who I have at number 10. And then after that, they have Tennessee. So they have 3 games against ranked teams coming up. So they're going to have a chance to prove that number 1 AP ranking. I still think we are number 4. And also, if you get a chance, go watch Joey Galloway's reaction to Coach Dan Mullins. When Dan Mullins said that he thought Florida was going to win the game this past weekend, that was pretty funny. And then Kirby threw some shade on Dan Mullins. He was kind of disappointed that he picked them over them, and then he actually said to the press that Dan Mullins didn't like to recruit. That was kind of that was a pretty harsh stab at Coach Mullins. Hey, Kirby is out there hitting the road. He flew to Buford to watch the quarterback that we're getting Raiola play, so always on that recruiting trail. And that's why I think Georgia is going to be good for a long time. So my featured player, since I know Georgia a lot more, I have Dylan Bell. He's our wide receiver. He plays running back. We've had a lot of injuries in running back this year. You know, we lost Robinson for the whole year. And this kid just comes in and gets the job done. He has to get some hard-nosed yards for us sometimes at the running back position. Look out for Dylan Bell. I really like this kid. So at number 3, I have the Washington Huskies. Man, they have had 4 straight tough battles recently. They really have to be careful there. Just like Georgia, they play 3 ranked teams next. They got a gauntlet coming up. They have USC this week, Utah, and then Oregon State. One of those, if they keep playing like they are in these one possession games, I know this past week it ended up being 9 points, which would be a 2 possession game, but the rest of those games that they've played have been very tight games. They're going to have to be careful. One of these teams is going to catch them. I actually think that they're going to get upset in the next 3 weeks. I'm not sure it's going to be USC this week because USC has zero defense. Watch out for Utah or Oregon State. But, I mean, hey, USC would be one of the teams that they might could run with them for a little bit. I'm not sure, but I do believe that they are going to get upset in the next 3 weeks, which would lead I still think it would lead to a rematch in the Pac-12 championship with Oregon and Washington. Washington can still go back and beat Oregon again and make it to the college football playoff, but I still just think Oregon's a better football team. The guy I like for them is Jabbar Muhammad. So if you remember what I said about Oregon, I love cornerbacks that get in the fray. This kid's only 5'10", and 183 pounds. He has 29 tackles, 2 sacks, 4 pass defenses, and 1 pick. I like a kid that's, when they set up a blitz and he gets in there to get the sack, especially, I mean, he's not that big. It's always good to see those smaller cornerbacks getting into it. So I always like to give them props. At number 2, we have the Florida State Seminoles. Taking care of business, they rolled past Wake Forest this past weekend with a 41-16 win. I'd like to give some quick props to my friend Jason Blaylock. He gave me some interesting information that they actually kept Wake to 82 yards passing, and they are the only Power 5 team not to allow a passing TD in October. That's pretty crazy considering that most offenses have become so pass heavy. I do believe that Florida State has a really good chance of making it to the ACC championship and hopefully playing Louisville. They have Pitt this week. They have Miami next week. I just don't see them having a problem with those teams. They're playing really well. They're taking care of business on the teams they should be. I think they're going to be in perfectly good shape. The featured guy for Florida State I like to talk about is Jared Verse. He's a defensive end, number 5, and he has 4.5 sacks. Going on to number 1, I have left Ohio State. They continue to win. They did what they had to do to beat Wisconsin. They found their running game, which is what I talked about last week. Look, we're just at the point where they don't have a lot of big games coming up. We're just waiting for them to play Michigan. I think they'll take care of their next 3 games. I really don't see maybe Minnesota in a few weeks. I just don't see them losing to anybody. Let's just get to the big game and see what happens, because that's going to determine who goes to the Big Ten championship and ultimately who goes to the college football playoff. Let's get to the rest of the top 25. I want to give my top 25 so you can kind of see where I'm pulling, back and forth from when teams are falling out of the top 12 into the top 12. We'll start at number 13, Missouri. That's why I have Louisville up at 12. And Missouri at 13, I think 1 lost Power 5 team should be above 2 lost Power 5 teams. So you have Missouri at 13, Notre Dame at 14, LSU at 15. LSU has their big game against Alabama. Then you have Tennessee at 16. Oregon State fell down to 17. I have the Air Force Academy at 18. I moved Oklahoma State into the top 25. Their top 25 win against Kansas looks even better now after the Kansas upset over Oklahoma. So head-to-head, they should be above number 20 Kansas. I have Utah falling down to 21 after their disappointing loss against Oregon. I have USC at 22. That team, that zero defense is going to have to change. Lincoln Riley's been known to not have much of a defense and totally focusing on that offense. Go find you a DC. I know they're trying to go into the transfer portal to bring in some defensive players, so I know they're working on it, but maybe in next year and a few years down the road, he'll get that defense in better shape. At number 23, I have the undefeated Liberty University. At 24, I have Chip Kelly's UCLA Bruins. Then finishing up the top 25, I have Tulane, who stayed. I mean, they were tied with Ole Miss going to the fourth quarter, and Ole Miss rallied to win that game. They were hanging in there with Ole Miss for a while. That is my top 25. Now let's get to the bracket next year. The college football playoff, this is what we'd look like. I just have them ranked down. If we start on the left-hand side, we would have Ohio State playing the winner of Texas and Alabama. Texas and Alabama, that would be a fun game. And then going down, we have Louisville against Michigan. And that winner would play Georgia, since Georgia moved in the top 4. On the upper right-hand side, we would go with the Huskies playing the winner of Penn State and Oregon. And that would be fun. Golly, how many times would these teams play each other if some of this was to happen? Which this would be different at the end of the season. We'll take a really good look at the end of the season. And then we move on down. We have the number 10 Ole Miss Rebels. They would play number 7 Oklahoma. And then that winner would play Florida State. And that will do it for the bracket. And I'm so excited for a 12-team playoff next year. Should be some good, exciting football. Tell somebody you love them today. Thank you for listening to Spot of Red. Later.